So this is very much of a systemic issue or a crisis. But why aren't we as Black people and our communities really discussing this more? Because this is literally happening in our backyards, our water, the ability to be able to grow your own food. Like, so many things are impacted as it relates to this systemic issue. But we're not talking about it. Why do you think that is?
What is sometimes the challenge is that our communities oftentimes are marginalized. Our voices are not always heard as they should be. And so there are a lot of grassroots organizations and individual community leaders who are on the ground really lifting up these issues, fighting to make sure that we get shared water governance, that, we're talking and communicating and working collaboratively with government agencies at all levels, and that communities are heard in terms of their wants and desires and ways that they want to see some of these problems addressed. So what I think a lot of times is happening is that our voices are just not being heard enough, and what we are saying is not being acted upon enough. To sort of bridge this disconnect between what government agencies might be trying to share about, some of these issues, climate change and health and things like that, I think it's important to recognize that as we try to communicate with folks, that facts don't move people, but experiences do, like what they have experienced. And so while I think it's necessary to have those facts to really stand up as sound science that does back up the fact that things like climate change exist and that it does have an impact on our health and well-being, when you start to think about or share these stories of how people have been personally impacted, those stories, I think, do have a way of getting into people's hearts. And when those stories are shared, people can then start to recognize that, oh, I've seen that before, or maybe I've even experienced that, or someone in my community has experienced that. And people start to recognize that we're all impacted by things like climate change. We're all in the same storm. We're just not always all in the same boat. And so when we are able to lift up the challenges, especially when we can show how communities of color and low-income populations tend to be the ones who are hit first and worst, that seems to help us to begin to break through in some of our messaging. So that storytelling along with the facts, I think, is really important.
Are there ways in which we can do a better job, independent of any client project, to ensuring that we, aid the bridging of that gap more?
I think that agencies like PivotPath can do a great deal in terms of helping to make sure that there is a platform for people's voices to be heard. And a lot of times that seems to be missing in a lot of government-led projects, unfortunately. And sometimes even as various organizations are working on behalf of government agencies, they focus a lot on, again, these one-way conversations. And they forget that authentic engagement with the community means that we are honoring and hearing the expertise that community members have, that we're elevating lived experience,